Okay. So just to put into perspective what we're doing, this is not your class, is it? Nope. Go up here. There we go. Okay, so today we are going to watch Act 1, Scenes 4 and 5, which are the last two scenes in the acts. But I do want to go over your Pear Deck stuff first, because all of that has to do with the themes of the story, which is what you're writing your paper at and what we need to be paying attention to constantly. So I want to discuss those things really quickly. Then tomorrow there's going to be questions to answer. Thursday we're starting Act 2, so we're flying through this. So we'll start Act 2 Thursday and Friday. Okay? 5. But Act 5 is very, very, very short. Act 3 is pretty long. Okay. So yesterday, you guys worked on this Pear Deck. Did you work with other people or did you work by yourself? Okay, good. I was hoping that you would talk to each other. You never know with who's covering, like how people react to that. Oh, okay. Wow. Perfect. Okay. So you read, so the first couple of questions, you guys, and again, you're allowed to take notes in the book, and I suggest taking notes in the book because that's like everything in one location. So we are looking at the 4 different themes, and I told you by some point, probably by Act 3, you're going to want to pick out a theme, and that is the theme you're going to pay attention to, and you don't really care about the rest of them, okay? Right now, we're still like being introduced to the themes, and you may not know which way you want to go. Something is going to stick at some point, and you're like, okay, this is the theme I'm going to stick with. I don't care about anything else, okay? But, and I honestly haven't looked at your Pear Deck stuff yet. I haven't had time. I was covering 7th grade math again this morning. It was wonderful. Lovely. Anyway, so this part was just kind of to refresh your memory about who these characters are. So I don't want to go over this in too much depth, but I do want to talk about fate. Because I don't care if you care about fate. This was just to get you thinking about it. But I do want to talk about the possibility of fate and what fate really is and how that theme comes into play. Because if you understand this topic, this is a fun, I like writing essays, you might not. But this is a interesting topic choice. Because there's a lot of different directions you can go with it. So the topic choice is the inevitability of fate, or like basically that things are out of our control, and the term star-crossed lovers. So in the prologue, we see, the prologue is on page 289, and they use the term star-crossed lovers. So this is our first introduction to this idea of fate in this story. Okay, it says a pair of star-crossed lovers who take their life. Does anybody know what star-crossed lover means? If you could guess. Okay, fate, what? Okay, lovers that met by fate. Now here's what we need to add to that, because you're right. Star-crossed lovers sounds really sweet and adorable and like, oh, they're star-crossed lovers, but actually it is fatal. Okay, so when you say the term star-crossed lovers, what that means is that these are 2 people who met that were never supposed to meet. Their lives were never supposed to cross. They were never supposed to interact with each other. Okay, and because they do, like their stars cross, and when stars cross each other, they like explode, right? So this is a term that means that this is not going to work, okay? So if you ever are like, oh, I love my boyfriend, he's my star-crossed lover, then you're gonna die, and so is he, okay? So that is what that term means. I think a lot of times we hear that, like people say, oh, star-crossed lovers, and it sounds sweet, but really it means that this is never meant to work out. This relationship is doomed. Okay? So that is something you need to keep in mind, because it sounds nice, but it's really telling us that this is doomed. So we see star-crossed lovers. That is our first introduction to fate. Yeah.
Like, let's say fate is some sort of cycle of like free will.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of like contribute to it because they love each other aside from what fate's saying. If you believe that, or you're not allowed to implement it.
I think that, well, you should, when you're writing an analysis, it is your opinion, but it wouldn't be like an I think. But here's where it gets tricky. Fate and free will are not the same. Like, if you're thinking like religion, then stay away from that. Like when we think of like God, for example, we think like God gave us free will or God has predestined what's going to happen. Okay, those are like the two different views.
But could you like argue that because you have your own ability to make your own decisions, that's nothing pre-planned?
Then that's not like the inevitability of fate is that we don't have control over what happens. This was going to happen, which is why this is a hard topic because this is what we overanalyze it, I think, a little too much. But fate, and like a lot of people don't believe in fate, like in this sense that things are going to happen and we don't have control over it. And when we say inevitability of fate, it means it's inevitable. No matter what, this was going to happen. Okay, that's what inevitability means. So when we're talking about this topic, we're saying that this is going to happen. This is the way it was meant to be, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. So, for example, my juniors right now are reading The Crucible, which is about the Salem witch trials and the people who were killed. And the Puritans at that time believed that God had predestined our future. So no matter what you did, even if you were the most holy person, God has either chosen you to go to heaven or hell before you were born. Okay, that's what Puritans believed. So they just lived good lives hoping that that was true, that they were going to heaven. I think I would be the opposite, don't you? Like, well, if you already decided, I might as well have fun while I'm here. Anyway, but anyway, so that is kind of what we're talking about. This predestined, what's going to happen no matter what. We as Christians, like modern Christians, most of the time believe in free will, that we make the choices that get us to where we're going. But this is the opposite of that. That was a really good question. That's why this is a hard topic. Okay, so the idea of fate, though, first comes into play when we hear star-crossed lovers. So we know in the first couple of lines that these people were not meant to be together, but they met. Okay, their paths were not meant to cross, but they did. And so they are fated to die. Okay, there's nothing they can do to stop it. So then that's where we come into play with this question. Do you think it was fate? And if you answer this wrong, it's fine. I just wanted you to be thinking about it. Do you think it was fate that Romeo is the person that the servant stopped and said, hey, can you read this list? Okay, so then I just want you to be thinking about these things. You may be like, no, this was just this guy was like, hey, here's a person you could probably read, right? Or maybe if you're somebody who wants to be who believes in this idea of fate, even if you don't, you could argue that it was. That's the beauty of writing and analysis. Even if you completely disagree with it, if you're a good writer, you can argue anything. Anyway, so do you think it was fate? So here in Act 2, where we see Romeo talking to the Capulet servant, is the second instance where we might have fate. This is inevitable. Romeo and Juliet are going to meet, they're going to die, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Okay? So be thinking about that if that's a topic you want to cover. If you're like, I don't understand anything she's saying, it's way too deep, then just ignore it and think about one of the other 3 topics. Okay? Okay, so then this is the last theme topic that we have not talked about yet, and this is the power of love. And I really, really, really love this scene, and you read it, so you might not have grasped all of it. But we get introduced to the nurse, and she's pretty hilarious, and you'll see that in the movie version. But we learn, when we talk the power of love, I want you to get out of your mind this idea of romantic love. Okay, because honestly, this play is not full of romantic love. It's full of lusty gentlemen and silly girls. Like there's not a lot of romance. There's not time for it. It's like 3 days long. So when we talk the power of love, I want you to think about love in the sense for like a love of a mother for her son, or a father for his daughter, or the nurse, the nanny for Juliet, or best friends love for their friend. Okay, somebody who is willing to go the distance, to sacrifice their life for this person that they love. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with power of love. So when we get to scene 3, this is our first, well, we do see Juliet's dad say that she wants her to be happy. So that's love. You might change your mind about him later. So don't hold tight to Lord Capulet. Okay, but in scene 3, we meet the nurse, and we learn, or at least if you paid attention, you read the margins maybe, you learn that what does Lady Capulet, what's happening? What are they doing? Somebody refresh our memories. What happened in this scene? Mm-hmm.
Wow, the nurse was kind of still like that because she's going in to see her marriage in her lifetime. She went in to see like more intentional, like well thought out.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So, Lady, go ahead.
It also like talks about how
very good, very good. And she like rambled on about her husband and stuff like that. She rambled, okay. But you see, the nurse's relationship with Juliet from the time she was a baby. The nurse literally breastfed Juliet. That's what it says, which is weird. But she had a baby at the same time, and her baby died. And so she was still able to feed Juliet, and her mom was young. She was your age. So she was like, you can feed her, that's fine. So the nurse literally gave her life, like, except for, having her herself. So they are very much connected. And so she has all these stories. She told this story about when Juliet fell backwards and she was laughing and her husband was laughing and all this stuff. So you see all these memories the way that a mother would talk about their daughter, right? So we see how much the nurse really loves Juliet. So here we have the power of love, and this character is going to be consistent throughout the whole entire play. So this is something worth noting if you're thinking this power of love theme. The nurse is probably our best example of love from beginning to end. Okay, she loves Juliet and she will do anything for her. Okay. However, she's also very silly. She's like, he's very handsome and women grow by men. Do you know what that means? Men put babies in women and they get bigger. Like, so she's very funny. She's like, this could be fun. Women grow by men. So she is like making these jokes about sex and about how attractive he is. And he's perfect. He's like a book, which is like, I don't know, it's a metaphor. But anyway, so you see the relationship here where Juliet's mom is more like, hey, he's a good guy and I think you should try to marry him. Right? So it's interesting. So we see the power of love. You also see that Juliet is a young girl and she's like, no, she's probably still playing with dolls if they had dolls, right? She's at that like naive age where she doesn't really care about guys yet. So it's interesting dynamic. But the party's tonight, so that's what we're gonna watch. Does anybody have questions about anything that we've covered? Okay, so what I would do if I were you, we're going to watch the next two scenes. However, I would still have your book out or like notes, like a notebook or something. Scene 4 starts on page 302, and it starts with Romeo and Mercutio and Bimbo. We haven't met Mercutio yet. He's the one I told you is going to be like the funny, like best friend character who makes inappropriate jokes. He's a little cray-cray. Now, in this version, they do drugs. That's because it's the 90s. In the real play, the drugs do not exist. So just keep that in mind. Like it's like ecstasy. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Hello. Okay, well, just a second. Okay, thanks. Okay, so anyway, yes, because Juliet takes a poison. It's like poison later, so we'll get to that. So there's an apothecary who's like a pharmacist. I use that term loosely. So there are drugs. But in this version, they're going to a party and they want to have fun. So of course, in the 90s, that meant that they had to do drugs. So that happens in the play or in the movie. It doesn't happen in the play. However, it's still very good. It's weird. But Mercutio's character is perfect in this version, so except for the drugs. So we're going to watch it. So you're going to see Romeo and Mercutio, and I'm going to stop you occasionally, and like I want you to kind of follow along in the text because I'm going to tell you we see fate come up again in a big way, okay, in this scene. And then hopefully we have time for the scene in the Capulets Hall where Romeo and Juliet meet. Remember, he's going there to see Rosaline, her cousin. Okay, so anyway, keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to stop this recording and then I will start the movie.